Hello, everybody. This is Podcast Bonita. My name is Rachel.
And my name is Shirley.
And we have officially decided to stop pretending that we're not South Park fanfiction trash.
There's no point in hiding it. If we're going to make a podcast about South Park, you know damn well we've already read and possibly written, wink wink, a lot of South Park fanfiction.
So this is our episode where we talk about our favorite South Park fanfictions, why we like them, where we found them, and what point in our life we were at when we read them for the first time.
And before this sounds like a Tumblr fic recommendation post, this is actually a topic that we've wanted to talk about for a while, and we kind of want to introduce, before we get into our favorites, like why fanfiction is such an integral part of the South Park fandom. And if you go on and check on fanfiction.net, South Park is one of the top TV shows that's like written about. You know, it's got a very devoted fan base, first of all, and we've kind of mentioned before that South Park in general has like its casual fans, you know, it's dude bros, and then it's got, you know, people like us who are, you know, a little bit more involved in like character and
sorry
wow
sorry start that over.
It's not really a Podcast of Bonita episode if there isn't one background noise in there that we can't avoid.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Exactly.
I just wanted to cut in real quick and say that I'm looking at fanfiction.com right now, or .net, sorry.
Yeah.
In the cartoon section, and South Park is ranked number 7 with 19,000 fics.
Yeah, which is nuts, because, you know, South Park, of course, it's been running for years, and it is pretty notable. A lot of people, even people who never watched the show, can recognize the characters, so that's to be expected with the territory. But again, like, fanfiction is super, super common in very specific, like, types of groups, and it's kind of wild, because a lot of South Park fanfiction follows similar tropes. It focuses on very similar characters, and it's really, like, it's really something that you wouldn't expect, you know, surface level, with its subject material.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that part of the reason for that is that, like you said, South Park's been around for a long time, but South Park fanfiction has been around for just as long, I believe. And some of the most common tropes, like Stan being a football jock in high school and Kyle being like the nerdy valedictorian, and then things like that, it kind of stems from the fact that back when South Park was on seasons 1 and 2, fanfiction writers didn't really know anything else about the characters besides that, like, Stan likes sports and Kyle is smart, you know? So that's kind of where those tropes stem from.
And what's really awesome is, like, these very minor tropes, and you see it with, like, you know, fanon, so fandom canon. There are a lot of things that, like, persist and still appear even in completely different fics. There are a lot of tropes that will persist, you know, even in minor characters that we don't see a lot on the show. And that's another aspect of fanfiction that's really awesome for the community, because it allows us to kind of embellish characters that aren't given a whole lot of screen time on the show. I have an example of that in my list, and it's really awesome seeing the creativity of the community and how there are some things that will just persist. You know, the fandom just understands it as canon, even if the show contradicts it. Like Ruby, Craig's little sister, even though that's not her name officially, they gave her a name in the Fractured Butthole, I believe. The fandom still calls her Ruby. She's addressed as Ruby in everything. I don't know how it came about. No one really knows, but that's just what we call her. And you'll see a lot of things like that in fanfiction. You know, they'll follow certain character types, and you can tell when a character is written in and out of character.
Yeah, and especially in the South Park fandom, because Matt and Trey, while they are geniuses, they're also kind of inconsistent sometimes. Like, they will give one character like multiple last names, or they just won't pay attention to certain characters. So it kind of gives the fans their own avenue to explore the blank slate of that character and kind of do whatever they want with them and have them exist in the South Park universe.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, as you know, and a lot of people made like a fan fiction and be like, oh, that's cringy or blah blah blah. It's worth saying that a lot of notable literary works stemmed as fan fiction or being inspired by other works. So if there's, you know, any outlet for creativity, to me, is a positive one. And that's fan fiction, especially for South Park, is no exception. There is a lot of creativity in this fandom.
I definitely agree. I think we as a society need to move past being embarrassed by fan fiction. I think it's just, it's a fun pastime, and if you're having fun reading it and writing it, that's all that matters.
Literally everything you read is fan fiction. Everything follows fucking, especially in Western novels, everything follows the same fucking structure. So everything is fan fiction. The Bible is the ultimate God fan fiction. And you like Percy Jackson? Bam! Greek mythology fan. Everything you like is fan fiction. Deal with it.
Yep, that's right.
So, now that we've kind of talked about what fanfiction is in the South Park community, do you want to list off some of your favorites, starting with Rachel?
Sure. Yeah, and I'll go first because I believe I have a few more than you.
You do.
Okay, hold on. Just let me pull up my notebook.
God, I thought we were so prepared for this, Rachel.
I am. It's right here. Okay, so my first fan fiction that I have picked out is actually a series. So it's like technically 3 separate ones, but they're all like connected, obviously. And it was written by an artist called Percentile. And it was posted on fanfiction.com, I think, like over 10 years ago. And so the 3 titles are US Route 285, Carnival, and then No One Ever Said That Life Was Fair. And apparently Shirley told me that the last one like used to be like a really popular fic in the South Park fandom, which I did not know.
Yeah, I remembered the title kind of instantly. It may have been just happenstance, but there are like certain writers, as there are with any fandom, there are certain writers that will gain popularity over time. There are certain fan fictions that everybody just kind of loves. But I remember seeing that last one specifically on a couple of like fic recommendations, and I didn't realize it was part of a series. I thought it was just like a one shot, but you have a reason for that.
Yes, what's kind of interesting about this one is that No One Ever Said That Life Was Fair, which is the 3rd installment in a 3-part series. But the author actually wrote this one first, and then they went back and wrote the other 2 as prequels, technically. So I thought that was really interesting because I believe I also read that one first and then went back when they added more. And I actually almost didn't include the series on the list because I don't know, it's just so past like what I enjoy in fanfiction now. Like, it's just like one of my first introductions to fanfiction, so I guess I had to include it. But this is very like, it's like Stan Kyle smut. They're in high school. It's like the epitome of like Stan Kyle fanfiction. Then there's also like a subplot where Cartman finds out and like outs them, and then Kenny like is in love with one of them, so he gets involved, and it's a whole thing. It's like a South Park soap opera with gays, and it's really, I mean, and I will admit, it is, I haven't reread it recently, but I remember it being very well written, and I was very engaged, and it was very intense. I enjoyed the story a lot as a 13-year-old.
Wow, you saying you were 13 makes me realize, I'm like, dang, some of these are hella old. These have existed, but they're still so readable. I look back, especially one of the ones on my list, The first one on my list is like from 2012, which in my brain I'm like, oh yeah, that wasn't that long ago, and then I realized it was 8 years ago. So I kind of dig that. I dig that a lot.
All right, I think I'm kind of done talking about that one. So do you want to go on to?
Pass it off to the side.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't want to say like this is like my least favorite one, but I don't know. It's like, because like I said, it was kind of my introduction to South Park fan fiction, and I enjoyed it. But I'm kind of like, I don't know. I mean, now as an adult, I don't read like smut anymore. So
Your asexual self.
that's right.
Yeah, I see. As a very angsty and hormonally charged teenager in high school, I definitely say like I read a lot more smut back in the day than I do now. Maybe because I also don't have time. I have an adult life. But yeah, I guess then I don't have any of mine in a particular order from like favorite to least favorite at this point, because they're very wide and different. I tried to get in the right. There are a lot of fan fictions that I absolutely love that aren't on my list, just because I wanted to spare the audience repetitiveness, because a lot of my favorites fall under the same thing, under the same category. And if you've watched the show before, you may or may not know that I really enjoy Kaibe, like Kyle and Bebe. Don't ask me why. I think I just really like the idea of two curly-haired people, one of them being chunky and the other one being a literal beanpole. And especially because Kyle is a very established character. You know, we know what he's like. But Bebe is a very kind of blank slate. But as we've mentioned with Fanon, you know, she's written oftentimes as like the fun, outgoing kind of, especially as like a teenager, kind of like the school slut or whatever, very open and out there. And also she's often headcanon as like a chubbier plus size person, which I absolutely love as a plus size person myself. So I think there's always been, I always kind of like characters and pairings that resemble how the fandom depicts Kyle and Bebe. So for whatever reason, I just really like him. It's probably like the only straight ship in South Park that I'm like super into. But yeah, that one's going to be the first one on my list. A lot of my favorites are Kyle and Bebe, but this is going to be the only one on this list that's like directly focused on them. And this first one is Happily Unhealthy People by LilyFan123. Again, this one is super old. It technically was never finished, which kind of kills me inside, but it's 7 chapters, and it is rated M. This is the only one on my list that is rated M. It does have, like, you know, your smut and everything. That's kind of like a really, sex itself is a really big focal point of this fanfic, because, you know, Bebe's often portrayed as the school slut, and in this one, Kyle is, everybody sees Kyle as somebody who's like sexually frustrated because he doesn't have, you know, he doesn't have like a dedicated partner, and doesn't talk a whole lot about sex, and he feels like an outcast. And it's really honestly a good commentary on how the high school setting kind of focuses on sex, because again, it's not just smut for smut's sake, which again, nothing wrong with that. I can enjoy that as well, but it really does talk a whole lot about the culture surrounding sex, especially in a high school setting, and how everybody thinks it's the end-all be-all. Because there's also a point, there's a major like focal point in this story with Stan and Wendy's relationship, where they feel, both of them feel kind of pressured and they're uncomfortable with having sex, but they feel like they have to do it because that's what everybody expects of them. So it's a really interesting, it's got a really awesome like emotional side to it. It's really adorable. It's Kyle and Bebe, which, you know, I'm always kind of a slut for. And yeah, I don't want to give like too much away, but it's really awesome commentary. It is the only one that's rated mature on my list, for kind of obvious reasons. But it's so much more than just like that mature rating. It's a really awesome fan fiction, and I wish it was. I kind of wish it was finished, but I still enjoy it. I'll still go back and reread it.
Yeah, not to one-up you, Shirley, but all of mine are either one-shots or they're all completed, so...
I know. Most of mine are all completed as well. They're all finito, but that's the only one, and of course, it's probably my favorite on this list.
Oh, wow.
I have not my favorite, but it's my favorite Kyle and Bebe fic, which there are a lot of them, and I just didn't add them because I didn't want my list to sound repetitive, but this one's easily like my favorite.
Alrighty. Well, so my next one is another series by Percentile, who is an author I really like, and it's called Alright, This One's for All the Marbles, and their description of it is, and we thought the crazy would end once we left South Park. So the kind of premise of the story is it is another Stan Kyle fanfiction, but it's kind of wildly different from the series I just mentioned. It's, I believe it takes place like 10 or 15 years like after they graduate, so they're like fully adults, and Stan and Kyle are like married, and they've like moved away from South Park, and it's kind of about like their mundane like couplehood, but also it's just kind of completely ridiculous and silly, and it's kind of just Kyle being in his own head, because I'm going to kind of spoil part of it because I think it's so funny. So if you want to read it, stop now and then come back. But the whole gist of the story is, like, so ridiculous. It's that, like, Kyle is, like, upset because he notices Stan is, like, when they're out together and, like, walking, he's, like, noticing that Stan's, like, not really listening to him, and instead he's, like, staring at this, like, there's, like, a girl walking ahead of them, and he's, like, staring at her ass, and Kyle's, like, really insecure and, like, jealous about this, and he gets really, like, insecure about it, like, the whole fic is kind of about that, and then at the very end, it happens again, I guess, and then Kyle brings it up, and he's, like, super upset, and then Stan's like, oh, no, like, you thought I was checking her out? I was, like, looking at her because, like, those pants are so hideous, I can't believe she went out in public like that, and then Kyle's like, Stan, that's gay, like, that was so funny, and then I just love, like, I don't know, that kind of encapsulates what I love about South Park fanfiction when it's done really well. Because it kind of, like, it has the characters being in character, but it also remembers what South Park is about. It's about, like, absurdity and silliness and just kind of being a parody. So many of these are on here because I just thought they were really funny stories. And they were well written, of course, and they were about characters that I like, but I just love to be entertained and I love to laugh. And I love that the authors that I picked really brought that to the South Park fanfiction.
Oh, yeah, and, like, the tones... Especially, there are some that are far different from how South Park is with its, like, general satirical nature. What I really love is a lot of fan fiction in South Park. It mirrors the tone of the show. It'll have these really soft and sweet and emotional moments, and then they'll throw in something hilarious, and I really appreciate authors in a community that can keep things funny but still have, like, meaning to all of them, and I find that especially with the ones on my list. Like, most of them are, like, serious and really, like, sweet and emotional, but they'll always have, like, bits of humor thrown in there to kind of remind you, like, okay, yeah, this is South Park we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's the reason why I like this particular fic more than the series I mentioned before. It's because that one was very, like, I mean, it was well written and it had some humor, but it was very, like, melodramatic and, like, emo fan fiction. Meanwhile, this one, Alright, This One's for All the Marbles, is very, like, it's mostly, like, comedy. Like, I mean, it has a plot and everything, but it's driven by comedies, and then there are some, heartfelt moments, but it's mostly just funny. I mean, it's a South Park fanfiction. It's not regular fanfiction.
Oh, yeah. This one is, I guess I'm going to move on to mine because I got tired of talking about yours. But This next one, I think this one actually is technically incomplete, but the last chapter kind of finishes everything up pretty well. This next one is called Shivers Indeed by Ribbonetta. And this one is it's a really cute dynamic that I really wasn't expecting. I was on a Karen and Kenny kind of like kick after the City Walk episode, with that in that episode, Kenny uses all the money he's to buy his little sister Karen a new doll, and I was like, that's adorable. Anytime Kenny and Karen get some like cute sibling interaction, I love that. And I remember while I was searching for fanfiction like this, I stumbled upon this one. And this one is basically about Butters at the library. And he meets up with Karen and Kenny while they're there. I don't want to spoil like too much, but Kenny has to beat the shit out of Cartman for stealing Karen's doll. And Kenny asks Butters to comfort her while he's taking care of it. And so Butters actually starts reading a Brothers Grimm tale, the story of a boy who went forth to learn fear. And it's really cool. What this author does is they place the characters, like they rewrite the story, the Brothers Grimm tale, as it would happen in South Park. So Butters, you feel Butters' fear and anxiety towards his parents, and it's still in that regular fairy tale setting, but it's written as it would be in South Park, and I think that's really, really interesting. I haven't read fanfiction that does something quite like this, and it's really sweet. It's really sweet with, like, Karen there, and it's an interesting dynamic that's not shown ever in the show with, like, Butters and Karen. Butters is, like, spot on written in this story, and yeah, it's technically not finished, I don't think they ever had a conclusion, but the way it ends, the last chapter does, could be, like, a fitting ending, so I really, really like this one. Super sweet, and there's, like, hints at Butters and Kenny shipping.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. It kind of just proves how talented and creative South Park fans are. I mean, not to pat ourselves in the back, but...
Oh, exactly. Like, we're the elite fandom. No, there's definitely some problematic aspects of our fandom as any, but, like, it's really, really creative. I wasn't expecting something like this, but I reread it, just kind of going through some things that I had saved, and this one is just really, really sweet. Like, it there's no other way to explain it. It's really nice, especially with getting to see Butters, like, use his kind of fears and his own, like, insecurities and help somebody else out who's experiencing the same thing. It's something that's really nice. I always like a nice character study like this.
So my next one is... So all my next stories are going to be by the same author, so I only have... Because as you can tell, I really was fans of, like, certain authors and the way they wrote, so I, like, loved all their stories. So the next one is by an author on fanfiction.net called Seaouryou, I think it's pronounced. But the first one, you might be surprised to find out, is actually a Kaiman fanfiction.
Oh, gross. Let's move on.
Okay, so it's called The Courtship of Kyle Broflovski. And then I'm going to read the description because this author's descriptions are all really funny. Okay, so it's Stan and Wendy are dating each other, except when they aren't. Cartman devises several cunning schemes to make Kyle date him, and Kyle dates his hand and considers himself best off. Oh, and Kenny is dead, but only every now and then. So basically, this is a short one-shot, and it's kind of just, the whole gist of it is that somehow Cartman has got into his head that, like, he and Kyle were supposed to be together, and so he kind of starts courting Kyle like a Southern belle or whatever, and Kyle's, like, so annoyed with it the whole time, and basically the whole gist of it is, like, it is technically a Kaiman fic, but it's also, like, kind of making fun of it. It is a kind of a big parody of it, and I remember, like, the author in the description, they were like, I mean, I think they said, like, I don't ship Kaiman, but, like, I'm surprised that so many people don't have more fun with it, because, like, as a ship, it really is very, like, kind of ridiculous and silly, and she's like, I'm kind of surprised more people don't have more fun with it, because they're all just kind of angsty. But so this one is, like, technically Kaiman, but not really, but I just really enjoyed this one because it's kind of like a parody of a certain ship, and it's also very funny, and there's other threads, like you say, about, like, Kenny and Stan and everything, and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, I love that. And, you know, Cartman is one of those characters that can be actually kind of difficult to write accurately, because he's far more than, like, your stereotypical, like, school bully. He does those things, but he's also incredibly conniving, and trying to stay a step ahead of him when you're writing him is difficult. He's definitely not, like, a stereotype. He's very much, like, a diverse character. There's a lot going on with Cartman, so anytime you can write him in character and give him, like, a really interesting motivation besides just, you know, something basic, that's a really awesome feat. Like, I shout out to our good Cartman writers.
Yes, absolutely. And I will mention that this author that I am going to be talking about the rest of the episode, who I love, they write Cartman very, very well, which is one of the same reasons that I love them, especially older Cartman too. So, and I just think that the way they write their characters, especially Cartman, is just so entertaining, and I just love to watch kind of the plots unfold, similarly to, like, maybe how they would in the actual show.
Yeah. Speaking of things in the actual show, I also love fan fictions that kind of focus directly on a very specific episode and kind of give closure to things that maybe fans don't have a whole lot of closure to. Do you like that rad transition? I felt really good about that. To bring up my next fan fiction, Operation Beautiful by Renegade. I think it's Renegade. That's how you pronounce it. This one's really awesome. This is a one-shot fan fiction, and it actually takes place after The Hobbit, which, if you don't remember, that's the episode about Photoshop and how the boys will just become blissfully ignorant and claim that these girls who are heavily photoshopped are just beautiful and flawless, but how it's also, like, actually damaging. And Wendy, who's been trying to protest the use of Photoshop, eventually sadly, like, caves in and photoshops herself, and you just see her crying, and that's, like, the final shot. And this isn't actually a Wendy-centered fic, but she definitely does play a major role. This is actually a Mysterion fanfiction, which also I absolutely adore. Anytime Mysterion is used, I love it. I love it. Anytime he's used in the show, fanfics, he's such an interesting character. Even though we know it's Kenny, it's almost like they're two different people because of their behavior. So this one I'll just read the synopsis that the author gave. Takes place after The Hobbit. Once Wendy's photo is released, working out becomes popular among the students. When Karen gets in the crossfire, Kenny will do anything to prevent her from falling victim to what he previously thought was the best thing to happen to South Park Elementary. He also manages to start a new trend in the process. So, super, super awesome. What kind of happens, the working out, quote unquote, is photoshopping. And what's really interesting is it shows kind of growth in Kenny. Because in this, I don't want to give, like, too much away, but Kenny is stoked originally about these awesome, sexy pictures. He says, like, wow, I no longer have to look at porn anymore. You know, if I can just look at these pictures of the girls I go to class with. And he's stoked about it until he realizes how damaging it is to Karen. Karen's really upset because she's seen as this ugly kid because she didn't have a photoshopped picture or whatever. And it kind of makes Kenny realize, like, oh, wow, this is what it's doing to girls' images. It's really sweet, kind of like a kind of discovering and, you know, correcting your own behavior, which is I'm always down for. I'm always down for a really sweet message. And I'm not going to spoil what happens at the end. But Mysterion saves the day, destroys Photoshop with the help of Kyle, which I think is really awesome. He helps settle out Wendy and everything. Wendy has a lot to do in this story, which I also appreciate. I think she's awesome. And it's just really cool with a positive message. And it has like the cutest ending when everybody goes back to school. I'm not going to spoil it, what it is. You'll have to read it for yourself. It is so cute, and it's a pretty quick read. It's a one shot. But I love this episode. I love this fan fiction. It kind of actually feels like an episode in its own right.
Yeah, that sounds really actually pretty interesting. I kind of like you said, when authors take a specific concept, like from an episode, and just run with it.
It really does give closure to the events of The Hobbit, which is so sad and cynical kind of towards the end. It really does. And I understand why South Park left it off that way. I'm not saying that's an issue on the episode itself. I think the episode is really effective, but I like how this fanfic can kind of like use that ending and create a new and further it, I guess, kind of create a new solution to the problem. But there's still like a lesson to be learned along the way. They didn't just Deus Ex Machina the ending. There's a lesson to be learned, and I really appreciate fan fictions that can do that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so my next fan fiction is another one shot, and it's technically kind of a Stan Kyle, but not really. It's kind of hard to explain. So the description is, the first real fight Stan and Kyle got into was when they were discussing who would be on top if they were, completely hypothetically, a gay couple. And it's this fic where it's, again, all the kids are in high school, and somehow it comes up, like, if they were gay, which they're not, because, you know, like, high school boys are like that, they're like, who would be on top? And so Stan and Kyle both think that they would be on top, and they end up getting so mad at each other, and it's, like, a huge, like, blow up. And then Cartman and Kenny kind of, like, almost, like, are trying to get in the middle of it, trying to get them to be friends again, and they kind of, like, start picking sides and everything. And then it's like, it's full like melodramatic about how like they're just saying like, well, we're not gay, but like them treating like the fight like a full on like high school breakup is like very funny. Very kind of self-aware on the author's part. And I don't know, I mean, you watch Always Sunny, right? You know the episode where called like Mac and Dennis break up?
Yes.
Yeah, it's very that. It's very like, they're like two supposedly straight dudes who are like very dependent on each other, and anytime there's a rift in the relationship, it's like full meltdown, full like it's more important to me than like my girlfriend is. So it's like, it's kind of funny in that way, and again, like the characters are really spot on. It's very funny, and it still feels like Stan and Kyle, but it also is like making full use of the fact that they're like teenage boys, and like stupid shit like this is like very important to them.
Exactly, yeah. Where they almost kind of miss what made them upset in the first place.
Yes.
But, I love things like that. And again, with humor, I really appreciate authors that can kind of keep the humor that's associated with South Park. Because, it's very easy to kind of overdo it and just throw out anything with, like, absolutely no point to it. That's what a lot of people think South Park is, which, I mean, sometimes they're right. But it's far more than just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. There's a lot of talent in writing effective comedy while still being in character and having a point to your joke.
Yeah, totally. And also keeping up with the tone, too.
Oh, yeah. Especially when you're talking about two supposedly totally straight, not gay kids, no homo teenagers, but yeah, not to like throw us into a total tone shift, but my next fanfiction on my list is really different from the rest because it is completely opposite in tone. It is like horror and angst based, and like we mentioned before, I love it when authors can hit on characters that are, very briefly. And this one, Sick Home by Lance Ruhiru. I think Ruhiru is how you pronounce that. This one actually focuses on Scott Tenorman. And it's a very short, kind of Drabble-esque one-shot fic. It's very short, but so beautifully written. I cannot give enough props to this author. It's very Stephen King-esque with how this person writes. So it focuses on Scott Tenorman over time. He's moved away from South Park after the events, if you don't remember, with something as crazy and random as Cartman making Scott eat his own parents, which is funny in a dark way. That's how South Park kind of wrote it. They took that and ran with it in this fic. It is portrayed as full-on, horrifying, and Scott is continuously living with it. It almost doesn't even feel like a South Park fanfic, but, you almost forget, oh yeah, that was kind of supposed to be funny, him eating his own parent, in a dark, incredibly grotesque way. It was funny. Nope, not in this fic. It is, you really see Scott, kind of suffer with it now, and it's so hauntingly beautiful with how it's written. And I really love it. Scott, and again, I know I keep saying it, but I don't want to spoil too much, even though it's super short. There's one section early where Scott's introduced, and he's basically a vegan now, and he can't he constantly tastes bile and vomit, and he dry heaves because of what happens to him. He's in his 20s in this short little fic, and it's still haunting him, and I love anything that's super horrific and grim, especially when you think about it source material.
I kind of love fics like that, ones where because a lot of the times in TV and movies and things like that, there's so much horror and stuff that is kind of thrown onto these characters, and because they're movie characters, they kind of just brush it off. But fan fiction really gives you an avenue to explore that trauma and kind of be well, no, I mean, realistically, this person would probably be much more upset about it, or it would probably affect them much deeper, and fan fiction is a great way to kind of explore that.
Mm-hmm. And I actually do believe, before people say Scott has that whole line in the 200 and 201 episode, I think this was actually written before that was released. This was written in 2007. Holy cow. That's old as shit. But again, I think it's such an interesting take. It not only is it beautifully written, but it's, I guess you can't really say it's in character, but it kind of creates its own character. I absolutely love this. I get excited. I kind of get goosebumps every time I read it, because it's so dark, and it's so unlike what it's sourced, but again, it just feels so real. It feels really real. So I love this fanfic.
So my next one is also kind of a tone shift from the ones that I've been talking about previously. It's called Not Necessarily Romantic. And the gist of it is that it's, again, a high school fanfic, but this one is actually not about Stan and Kyle. It's about my old guilty pleasure ship, which is Wendy and Cartman. So this one is about, apparently, it's I don't know, their junior or senior year or something, and Wendy's, finally, the head of the school paper. She's worked on it for years, and she's finally achieved her ambition, and she's excited she gets to do whatever she wants with the paper. But and in this one, she's dating Token, I believe, and their relationship has kind of gone stale a little bit. And unfortunately for her, Cartman ends up stuck in the class, and she kind of has to deal with him. But also, what ends up happening is that there's a section of the paper that's and it's not necessarily gossip, but it's also kind of anonymously published stuff, stuff like that, and someone starts writing anonymous love letters to her, and so she is she's trying to run the paper, and she's trying to figure out who's writing this for her, and she kind of has this like annoying banter with Cartman, so she's like, is it him doing it, or is it Token? But like, again, like, that relationship is kind of like grown old, but and this story is like, it is entertaining and it has great like character in it, but it also is like, it kind of just feels like a romantic comedy, which I kind of love.
And honestly, it's with a lot of these ships, like, even if I don't like it, I can still enjoy a fanfiction if it's written well, and if they're in character, and if the plot is interesting, like, you can still enjoy it, so I love, even if I'm totally like, Cartman should be alone forever and does not deserve the love of anybody else. I love a fanfic that can kind of like pull me away from that and give me like an interesting dynamic. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I agree. Because like, from watching the show, I like don't care for them together at all. But the reason I ship them so hard for a long time is because of fan fiction like this, where it's written so well and like so believable. And I agree. I'm on one level, I'm like, well, Cartman doesn't deserve her in like any world. But also, I'm like, in the perfect world, they would be like the coolest, most badass power couple.
I'm not even joking. That's kind of honestly how I got into shipping Kyle and Baby, because they really honestly do not have a show dynamic besides like tree houses and the one time she tried to like shoot Wendy. But like, that's honestly, it's the fanfic and how well written a lot of them are, and like fan canon and all these ideas that make me want to ship them. It's honestly sometimes not even the show itself that makes me want to ship these characters. It's what the community like produces.
Yeah, absolutely. South Park fandom is great at kind of looking at potential dynamics between characters and being like, there's something there. That's how Tweek and Craig came about.
Oh, basically, like, they're so good at conditioning and brainwashing people into shipping the same thing. Because, again, speaking of Creek, we would be failing a fan fiction list if we did not have a Creek fanfic in here. And who better to supply us with that than one of our own hosts, Miss Rachel? Because the next fic on my list, and I'm not even saying this because Rachel wrote this. Like, Rachel's incredibly talented as a writer. I would sure damn hope so, because that's, like, your job. It's kind of what your degree is based off of. So I'd be a little bit nervous if your fanfic sucks. And I would tell you, because I tell you everything else sucks. But Rachel's fanfiction, Pandemic 3, Revenge of the Guinea Pirate, is easily, like, my favorite Creek fanfic, because, it's not one of those ones that's, like, it's so in character. Gotta pride you on how in character it is. And I love that you explain, for basically, I guess I should read the description, because there's a lot to it. It's a one-shot. Do you even have a description for this one?
I think so.
I can't even find it anymore.
Hold on.
Basically, our lovely and endearing Strike is kidnapped. Or Guinea napped. Guinea napped? Is that a word? And hilarity ensues as Tweek and Craig try and get him back. I was originally mistaken, because I remember when Rachel was writing this, or you, like, this is years ago, and you had told me, like, I kind of want to write this. I'm like, yeah, do it. And you sent it to me in sections, so I always thought this was a series, but when you published it, it was a one-shot. But super funny, first of all. This is, like, my favorite part about this fanfic is that it's humorous. Like, it's spot on for Tweek and Craig. I love that you add so many of our headcanons into it, like Tweek being a boxer is so rad, and Craig being so deadpan and kind of he's written as very much like following a schedule. I love that. And and it's funny. It's shipping those two together without it being like overtly in your face like a lot of other fan fictions are. Because sometimes I find like the super lovey-dovey Tweak and Craig fanfics, they don't really characterize those two as well as they could be. You know, these two aren't maybe like the most like in your face snuggly all the time characters. You know, they have like funny wits back and forth. So I really love this one. I read it and kind of like giggle to myself like a little idiot when I read it, but definitely go give it a read. Best Creek fan fiction out there.
Well, aw shucks, I'm very I'm very pleased and, you know, flattered that you chose my fic. I guess maybe I should talk about it a little bit. Do you want me to?
Go for it.
So I guess what I was going for is kind of stuff that you've touched on. Is that one, like I've talked about with the fan fiction I've been recommending, is that I like South Park fan fiction that's funny, and so I tried to create one like that, and I wanted the humor to come from the characters and who they are and their relationships. So I hoped that it would feel like very authentic. And then also, I believe in the fic, they're only like, the kids, Tweak and Craig are only like 12 or 13, I think. So it's not like a smut fic, and it's not one of those fics where it's like them getting together. Like in this one, it's like they've already been together, their relationship is established. And that's like one of my favorite things to write about, is that like when two characters were already together, they're already in love, and then you kind of like explore their dynamic and have them still go on adventures. And then their kind of relationship is sort of the backdrop of it, but mostly it's about like their own individual journey or like what they're trying to accomplish. And then again, of course, I like the humor of it.
Yeah, it's and again, like I said, it's one, of course, I was there during the writing process, so I might be a little bit biased for this being on my list, but genuinely, like, it is a perfect example of a more comedic fan fiction, really written in the style of South Park, which I always appreciate, because that's sometimes not very easy to do.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna go on so I can stop blushing.
Go on. You have a couple more. I only have one left on my list, so if you want to just ramble a few in there, go for it.
Okay, great. Okay, so the next three are all Wendy and Carmen fanfictions, so maybe I can kind of just run through them real quick.
Maybe I should have had more Kyle and Bebe, because now I don't. Now I feel like I left some out just to spare the audience when you do no such thing.
Yeah, no. And it's funny because like I don't even ship them anymore, but like I can't deny that these stories are like so good and well written that I just had to include them. Okay, so the first is called "The Story with the Stupid Plot," and the description is: in which there is a dance, but very little dancing. Everyone is scared of Wendy. Everyone loves Carmen. Stan is very much gay. Kyle is very much not gay. And Kenny very much wishes you were gay. So this one is actually a series. It has 4 chapters, so it's kind of in and out. And I believe this one is very entertaining because it involves, it's kind of like another romantic comedy one. It involves like Wendy and Carmen somehow like becoming best friends in childhood, and then Wendy's like secretly crushing on him, and then there's a whole thing where I think one of the girls like ends up asking Carmen to the dance as like a joke, and then Wendy is trying to like protect her friend, and then one of the funnier parts is that I believe Stan and Wendy are like still dating in this one, and so Carmen, part of his mission is that he's trying to like figure out how to get Stan out of the way, so he decides that he has to convince Stan that he's gay and in love with Kyle. And I just love that because it's like that is such a Carmen logic where he's like, well, this is the only way.
That is genius. Oh my gosh, because that is just Carmen. Carmen loves to convince Kyle that he's gay.
Yeah, it's like a weird thing with him. Okay, so the next one is called "Taking a Page from the Gnome's Book," And the description is, Eric will do anything to win Wendy's heart, even if it means helping Kyle, convincing Stan he's gay, becoming Bebe's slave, and listening to Kenny talk about his feelings. He might even succeed, too, if the Cartmans and Charlie Manson don't screw it up. So this one is 3 chapters, and it's kind of similar to the last one, where it's like, but it's also like Cartman is just like working really hard to try to win over Wendy, because for some reason he's decided that he's in love with her. And then it's kind of like those things, like almost like a favor chain, where it's like, okay, well, I have to do this thing for Bebe, so she'll like give me information about Wendy, and then I have to do this for Stan to convince him to be fine with me dating Wendy, and then blah, blah. It's like all this kind of ridiculous shenanigans and stuff. And then part of it ends where I think a bunch of Cartman and a bunch of his friends like all end up at like the Cartman family Thanksgiving, and like Charlie Manson shows up at some point. and I think this one also has like a Kenny and Bebe subplot too. So there's a lot going on.
I also tried to find some of my favorite Kenny and Bebe like friendship fics, because I absolutely love the fan-in with those two. Like, they're just friends with benefits all the time. I love that. But I think with a lot of my other favorite fics, some of them I was not able to find, which, do you want me to go ahead and do my last one?
No, I think I'm gonna do one more, and then you can go, and then I have my last one.
Go ahead.
I know, sorry, I have a lot. Okay, so this one is my favorite Wendy and Cartman fan fiction, and one of my favorite like South Park fan fictions. And so it's kind of similarly to one of yours that you mentioned, where it's like based on an episode of South Park, and it's based on the episode My Future Self and Me, I believe, where at the end of it, Cartman, like, you know the end scene where it's like Cartman from the future appears, and he's like all like ripped and rich, and he's like, Cartman, you did such a good job. And then then Cartman's like, oh, never mind. And then it actually appears that because he like doesn't care, he like becomes like a fat plumber or something. Yeah. So the whole thing of the story is based on Cartman in the future he builds a time machine, he goes back in time and to congratulate his younger self, but then he kind of ruins the timeline. And in the original one, he's like, he and Wendy were married, and so he has to. In this one, he's stuck in the past, and he has to figure out how to get back. So he's like trying to convince his younger self to like take better care of himself, and it's just so funny because it's like adult Cartman having to put up with like baby Cartman. It's very funny. And then in the new timeline, Kyle and Wendy are married, which is like, it's just like really, it's like a whole thing. And then like Stan and Kyle aren't friends anymore because of it. And so the description of it kind of does a good job. It's Cartman returns to the future, an obese car repairman instead of a wealthy CEO of his own time travel company, and becomes obsessed with fixing the life he so spectacularly screwed up. And I love this one because, like I said, I also in the new timeline, he's like, Cartman's married to Shelley, so that's the thing. And so I love that one because I think in the first chapter, like, Kyle in the original timeline tells Cartman, he's like, don't do this, it's a bad idea. And then Cartman's like, well, because Kyle said not to, now I have to do it. and then once he like goes back and he fucks everything up, he's like blaming Kyle. He's like, why did Kyle tell me not to do it? He knew I would do it. And I just love that because there's so many like little gems like that, because this, like I said, this author writes Cartman so well, and just every like interaction he has, like his relationship with Kyle or Wendy or whatever, it's like so genuine, so funny, and I just love this story. It's 7 chapters, and I love the way it ends too.
Oh, I love that. That's adorable. And again, props to anybody who can write Cartman really well, because it can be so easy just to either over exaggerate him and make him like not believable, versus just keeping him like kind of bland. So that sounds awesome. And I hate wrapping up this episode with a fan fiction that I have no link to, because this is easily like one of my absolute favorite South Park fanfics. It's very out there, but I loved it because it was just so unique to what a typical South Park fanfiction is usually like. So for now, I'm going to call it Untitled AU Fic. I scoured fanfiction.net all day yesterday to try and find it. I think the user may have deleted this. I wish I had saved it somehow years ago. But I remember, I think the last time I reread it was about 2 years ago, so it's been gone, I think, a while since then. But even though I don't have the title, I do want to give this an honorable mention because I think it's just so unique. So the basic plot around this is an alternate universe of South Park where all of our characters meet in college. Stan, Kyle, Craig, Cartman, I think, is kind of pushed to the wayside in this one. I don't think he had a major role in it. Kenny and Tweek and Wendy and Bebe.
Wendy
and Bebe all meet in college. And, of course, I got into this one because it had Kyle and Bebe in it. They're a married couple. Kyle owns his own business. They have 2 children. Wendy is single. Pretty much just about everybody else is single or divorced in the group. And they're kind of have all gone their separate ways since their college days. And then Kyle and Bebe find out that their friend Kenny has passed away from suicide. And it kind of brings everybody back together to Kyle and Bebe's house because they're holding like the memorial and they're kind of doing all the plans because Kenny's family is completely uninvolved. And they find out that Kenny left behind a trans girl, Tweek, which is really interesting. I never had like a Tweek and Kenny fan fiction before, but it was really interesting because Tweek was portrayed as a trans woman in this, and she's completely by herself in this story, trying to get used to Kenny's old friends. It shows a lot of like drama. They get like, it's really sweet because they all like mourn at one point. There's a little bit of drama here and there. It like you said, it's kind of like a South Park soap opera a little bit, but it's also got like humor, and they're written really well because they're not just teenagers in this story. They're adults with like kids and everything. And Wendy's struggling. Wendy's trying to balance like wanting to have a baby with having a career and not having a person to settle down with. And it's like, it's a very interesting take because usually when the boys and the characters are aged up, they're only like teenagers, as we've seen in these past couple of fan fictions. So it's really interesting to see like an adult take in such like a drastically different setting, but everybody is still in character. They're just adult versions of themselves. So I really, really love this fan fiction. If anybody knows on the off chance what I'm talking about, I would love for you to comment about it. I unfortunately scoured everywhere to try and find it. It may have been deleted, but I definitely wanted to mention it because it is such a great example of like an alternate universe fanfic where everybody is still in character, just put in a drastically different setting.
So at risk of spoiling it, can I ask a question?
Go for it.
Does Kenny ever come back alive in this fanfiction?
He does not.
What?
The thing is, so he doesn't come back alive, but we don't know if he's actually truly dead or not.
Oh, okay.
Everybody just like presumes that he's dead. And the thing is, what's interesting about this story is a lot of Kenny's kind of more secret life becomes unfolded. So it's less about Kenny's death, really, and more about like, wow, there's so much about Kenny that we kind of didn't know. And it focuses on like each individual character's like relationship with Kenny when he was still alive. So like it's super, super cool. I really wish I could find it because I was kind of surprised that I was really into it. It was so different from what a stereotypical South Park fan fiction was like, and I wish I could find it. If I do find it on some off chance, I will edit this video and put it in the description. But yeah, for now, I'll just call it Untitled AU Fic that I absolutely adore.
Alright, so as we wrap up, I have one more fan fiction to talk about.
you? I thought I was the last one.
No, I have one more, and it's my favorite one. I love it so much. It's my favorite fan fiction I've ever written. I mean, read. I didn't write it. Sorry.
I was about to be like, damn, we getting really conceited up in this.
No, it's not mine. This was also written by Seaouryou. And the description, or it's called The Journal of One Kenny McCormick, and the description is, "Oh, life, it's such a tremendous pain in the ass. I'm not too thrilled about death either." And it has 25 chapters, which sounds like a lot, but each chapter is only about like a page long, so it's not a lot. And I just love this because it's set in high school, like most of them are. And it's, and the premise of it is that Kenny turns 16 and then his dad gives him like a journal. It's like basically just like a cheap notebook from Walmart. And he's like, here's your gift. And so Kenny starts writing in it, and he writes in this journal, and it's really kind of brilliant because it's written in a way where it's very much like, this is a teenage kid writing about his life in a journal, and it's kind of like offhand comments about things that happen, and he's kind of like being snarky about it, and you learn things about Kenny, and it's very, very funny. And most of it is just Kenny being like kind of like annoyed with everything. Like, he's like, oh, you know, I died and ended up in hell, and then I had to hang out with Damien. It was like so annoying. And then and I just love it. And then it also kind of goes in and like Kenny like really likes art and things like that, and it kind of goes on, and he used to be friends with the goth kids, and as you keep reading it, he kind of drops little hints about how his older brother died a few years ago, and you're like, oh, like what happened here? And so as you keep reading, he kind of drops more hints about what happened, but it's all very much still, every chapter is like him moaning about his life, and it's like, oh, I'm failing English, so Bebe had to come over and tutor me, and I hate Bebe, and blah blah. And it's just, but the whole thing is just, I mean, I don't know, maybe it doesn't sound that great, but it's so funny, and it's written so well, like very much like they really like make use of the format where it's like this character's writing in a journal, and it's written like that, and you can tell like the relationships Kenny has with other people based on how he talks about them, and it's very funny, and you'll laugh a lot, but by the end of it, you'll definitely like be crying or tearing up, because it really because he kind of reveals like what happened to the brother, and then it's like a total gut punch at the end, and it's really very, very good. I love it so much, and I recommend it to everyone.
I gotta read this. This sounds like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but South Park edition.
Yes, if you don't have any interest in any of these, at least read this one. Like, I don't care if you don't read any of the other ones, I recommend it.
Honestly, same. I'm like, I feel bad for one of my absolute favorites being one that I can't actually link here, but if any of these interest you, we definitely have the links to them in our description. And also, if you have one that you want to recommend or something that you absolutely love, if you want to self-promote, put yours down in the description as well, and we might give them a read. We may update this video or something, do a part 2 if we happen to find more that we love.
Yeah, maybe we could do like another episode where we read some of our fans' favorite fan fictions, or like maybe we read each other's, like I read the ones you recommended and vice versa, and we like review them.
I thought you were going to say you read the ones that I wrote. I'm like, those will never see the
light. No, the ones you recommended.
I mean, they are pretty dang good, I might say. No, I'm kidding. They're decent, but they're all just kind of baby trash. And I think the next episode that we're going to do is our predicted futures one, which we do have to work on a pretty good bit anyway, so that's going to incorporate a lot of our writing as it is.
Just to clarify a little bit, we've talked a lot about, like, what we think the characters will be like in the future and what their lives will be like, and so the episode that we're planning is, like, we're actually going to sit down and write down, you know, I think this character would be here and blah, blah, and this goes through their life or whatever. And so we kind of just wanted one video that have all of our opinions about this in one place, because they're kind of, like, scattered right now.
They really are, and I'm not sure if... We haven't really decided if we're just going to create, like, one solid storyline for each character, or if Rachel and I are going to come up with 2 written separate ones. But we'll just see how it works out. We'll see.
Yeah, so keep a lookout for that one.
But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. This was really fun to talk about. Also, keep those questions coming in. I love reading the comments, even if they're mean. I really, honestly love reading comments. on our videos. So, if you liked it, let us know. If not, also let us know, I guess. Tell us what you want to hear. And thank you guys for listening.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for listening and subscribing and commenting. We appreciate all of you guys very much. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.